I thought, how did the new kid get such a high post? It didn't take me but 2 meetings to realize I got it because nobody else wanted it.
From Main Street to Wall Street, America is about to experience what change really looks like. Today's guest is Alabama's Katie Britt, a trailblazer in the United States Senate who can't wait to push the reset button under a new administration out to break old habits with new opportunities. From small business to protecting our borders and our children, Britt is clear and unwavering. Change begins right now. From Ballard Studios in Washington, D.C., it's 13th and Park.
You and I can differ, but that doesn't mean you and I cannot be friends.
That often is missing in politics.
We went from North Korea to M&M. That's a lot, man.
Aliens could have invaded and nothing would surprise me at this point.
It's a nightmare.
Those are the facts.
We have to solve everything.
What's in this tea?
Well, Senator, it's great to have you on the show. I love the fact you came in today and you introduced yourself as Katie.
Absolutely.
That's so refreshing in a town that's very high on titles, right?
Well, I get mistaken a good bit on the Hill as a staffer. I have to consistently show my Senate ID. but seriously, I think, remembering where you came from, who you are and who you represent, I think is essential to actually being able to do the job that you're sent here to do. And so, yes, just Katie.
Well, you grew up, now Novacell, used to be Fort Rucker, with a great appreciation for military families and their sacrifice and their struggles. You are today a ranking member on the Homeland Security Subcommittee for Appropriations. How has that influenced your sense of priorities, not just about the border, which obviously is on top of mind for a lot of people, but also about the military?
Yeah, so look, when you grew up in a place like I did, right outside the gates of Fort Rucker, as you mentioned, now Fort Novacell, you see the sacrifice of our servicemen and women. And you see very clearly, Adam, that sacrifice is not just theirs, it's that of their entire family. And so you sit next to kids in class whose parents are gone for months on end. You realize some of them may never have the opportunity to come home. And so you understand that freedom's not free. You understand that there are men and women and their families that are willing to put it all on the line so that we can experience the greatness of America. And so I think it crystallizes what I'm fighting for and who I'm fighting for in D.C. So it's things like that when you're looking, when I was slated to be the top Republican on Homeland Security, I thought, how did the new kid get such a high post? It didn't take me but 2 meetings to realize I got it because nobody else wanted it. It is obviously a beast, but it is one that I am ready and willing and proud to take on, and that's securing our border. I mean, we are clearly a nation of immigrants. We are also a nation of laws, and the lawlessness has affected every community, every corner of our nation, and it's time to regain that stability and security that we as Americans maybe at some point took for granted, but now understand how important it is.
Well, I think a lot of people in America feel insecure these days, and not having a secure border, if we can't secure our border, you ask, what can we secure? What can we control?
That's exactly right. And look, a nation without borders is not a nation at all. And so when you're looking, whether it's the fentanyl overdoses, fentanyl being the leading cause of death between the ages of 18 and 45 in our nation, knowing that it's coming from China, making its way, to Mexico across our border. And literally, I've had to sit across from one too many parents. One is one too many, but it has been countless stories of how this has affected people. We, I believe, have an obligation to stop that flow. When you're looking at, young women that have lost their lives and or have been the victim of migrants who have come here illegally, whether it's next door in Georgia with Lake and Riley or Jocelyn Nungary in Texas and others, making sure that we stand up and try to prevent those things from happening. I mean, if you look at the non-detained docket, so we have to make sure now we have an opportunity to secure our border. And that goes to making sure that we have physical and technological barriers on our southern border to prevent those from coming here illegally and make sure that we're actually doing what we're supposed to when it comes to interior enforcement. For far too long, people have looked away from that. If you look at the non-detained docket that ICE is tracking here, I mean, it's gone from 3.3 million to 7.5 million under this administration. Over 1.3 million people who have been given their final orders of removal have gone in front of a judge and have been given due process.
And where are they today?
And where are they today? And so, removing those people, I think, is critically important, and it also serves as a deterrent. And then you're looking at just everyday people who are being saddled with, additional burdens as a result of this, and they deserve better, and we owe them some results.
I remember you talking about how families are struggling, communities are less safe, the nation is less secure. And there was a sense of personal connection to all of that.
All of
Where does
it.
that come from?
Look, you think about this, and as a mom, I'm looking at the nation, and I am looking at leaving my children less opportunity, less freedoms, less security than I grew up with. And it is part of who we are in the American spirit to want to do better and be better and leave the next generation in a better spot to succeed. And when you look at what we are leaving, the people behind us, we can't say that today. And so the things that we are allowing to fall by the wayside, particularly the things that this administration has done, I think America has finally gotten to the point that I was in saying enough is enough. And I think about my daughter going out for a jog, and that's exactly what Lake and Riley did that morning and never had the opportunity to come home. When you think about the stability that we had under President Trump in the Middle East with the Abraham Accords and a possibility of that growing and yet that doing nothing but retreating and turning into chaos under this administration. People look at Putin's aggression into Ukraine and what does it do to our farmers and the price of fertilizer? And you look at our farming community that is literally hanging on by the threads because this administration has failed to pass a farm bill. We are about 400 and something days past the deadline of passing a farm bill. So they're dealing with old reference prices, so to speak, and they're dealing with high input cost. And they are the best among us, along with our servicemen and women, and yet probably 20 to 30% of them, if we can't figure something out, will have to actually stop farming. And so all of these things, you think about the border, you think about abroad, and then you think about here at home. So as a mom and looking around and the perspective that brings and talking to fellow moms that are having to make tough decisions, that are having to give their children less opportunity, their dollar doesn't go as far, and it is frustrating. Yeah. And I am excited because I think Donald Trump and a Republican Senate and a Republican House, we have an opportunity to bring that change that America so desperately is yearning for.
Well, let's talk about Donald Trump. There's no question that this president and the team he's putting together is going after one thing like their lives depend on it.
Tell me, what change?
It's change, right?
Yes.
And it's not going to be incremental.
No.
And it's not going to be, we'll just do a couple of adjustments here and there. They want wholesale change. Now, the American public for years has said, we don't like what's going on. We don't like the system. We don't like the way we're conducting business. We don't like the way we're doing our foreign policy. They've said this for years. But Donald Trump, he's all about change. Why would they not say, Godspeed, President Trump? Go at it.
Go.
Let's see what real change looks like.
So what you just said is that's it, change. People are so sick of people getting elected, thinking they somehow become experts on every issue and forgetting about everyday Americans. Small business. My parents are both small business owners. You look at this regulatory regime that we've seen just continue to grow under the Biden administration. President Trump will fix that. Under his previous administration, he said, for every one reg I put in place, I'm going to wipe 2 off the books. We ended up wiping 7 off the books for every one that he put in. People are sick of bureaucracy, they're sick of red tape, and they're sick of the government standing in their way instead of allowing an opportunity for them to flourish. And so I think you will see us get back to the basics, meaning stop the politicization of what we're seeing across the board, stop, putting the needs of those from other countries above the needs of those here. Look, we understand that we are a leader across the globe, and that is absolutely the way that every American wants it to be. We want to be that shining light, that beacon of democracy. We want to have that strength and respect from people across the globe. But if you're not taking care of things in your own house, how your grandmother would always say, sweep off your own front porch before you go sweep off everybody else's.
My grandmother said that a lot.
Right. Mine did too. Mine did too.
Right.
And so I think there are a lot of things where people are just not able to achieve their American dream. And so I think on day one, you're going to see President Trump come in. He is going to undo so many of the harmful policies and positions that Joe Biden has put in place, starting with the border. moving into energy, making sure that we're not only just energy independent, but we're actually energy dominant, knowing that that doesn't just drive down cost here, but it allows us to be able to provide energy to our allies so that they don't have to depend on our adversaries, which, Adam, takes me directly into actually achieving peace through strength. So peace through strength, obviously always talked about under Ronald Reagan, and that's where it was coined. And Donald Trump practiced it, and I believe he will do that again on day one. We've got to go back to a place where our allies respect us and our enemies fear us. So you're going to see Donald Trump restore the strength that our men and women in uniform deserve, that respect that they deserve. And I think that you will also see him hold other countries accountable, not take us for granted. Creating a space, he keeps saying, we're going to build America back. We're going to make America work again. And that's what America wants. We want to be that shining beacon on the hill, but we want the government to get out of the way and give us an opportunity to thrive.
So you stood up in a big way for families and for children. And the Stop the Scroll Act in particular is an example of that. I saw the interview not long ago on Fox when you were with Senator Fetterman from Pennsylvania, and both of you were singing off the same hymnal. You were both saying this is a problem. This is something we got to take care of now. Our kids are hurting. Explain what's in that act and why it's so vital for the mental health of our children and for the future of this country.
Absolutely. Well, first off, look, we've just talked about a number of issues where we disagree. I disagree with many of my Democratic colleagues, and where I do, I'm going to stand firm and speak loudly and work to get people on our team on these issues. I also believe that where you share a common goal with people, even if it's on the other side of the aisle, you have a duty and obligation to the people you serve to actually get in a room and try to figure out a pathway forward. And that's exactly what you see with Senator Fetterman and I in this situation, where we are looking at the mental health crisis across the nation. We are looking at what is happening to our young people. I think we were both taken back by the numbers that came out of the CDC saying,
huge, right?
Oh gosh, saying 1 in 3 high school young women said she actually considered taking her own life. And then 9% of our high school population, 9%, actually attempted death by suicide. When you look at those numbers, you look at the rate of depression, from 2011 to 2019, rate of depression more than doubled. That perfectly coincides with the rise of social media and both being parents. It is a unique perspective. We are parents first, lawmakers second, but that being that parent informs so much of what we bring to the table and the prism in which we look through something at. So raising kids in this environment is very different than when we grew up, not having social media, not having the internet at your fingertips at all times. It's different, and it's challenging for our kids, and we owe them more at this point in time. And so what Stop the Scroll did is the Surgeon General came out this summer and said you should not be on social media before you're 16, came out about that, and said that there needed to be warning on social media sites. So our bill is very simple. It just says the Surgeon General and the FTC should come up with that warning label, and it would be, reviewed every some odd years as it's supposed to be, but it would almost be like a pop-up box. So when you got on social media, it just says whatever they envision it saying, that it can present mental health challenges for you personally. Additionally, the one thing that we did say that it must include is a link to access to help. So we envision that to be maybe a 988 or something similar. If someone before that they make an irreversible decision would have a link to get help. And so that's the only thing that Fetterman and I said had to be on there. But not only is this not a Democrat or Republican issue, it's an American issue. We think that the more parents learn and the more tools that we give them, the more guardrails we're able to put up, we believe that will give more opportunity for the next generation to thrive.
Your parents first, you and John Fetterman. But in that same interview, I learned something.
Senator Fetterman, you were being treated at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, inpatient treatment for clinical depression after your stroke and here in town, and you had a visitor from Senator Britt.
Yeah.
And you established a relationship?
Well, yeah, our relationship kind of started. It's like her husband had the kind of career I wish I had playing football.
Football player, yeah.
Mine didn't turn into much, but he made it to the NFL. But they're just wonderful people.
And we feel the same way.
It never came about the politics or what team that you're in. It's just about, hey, working for what's, I think, better for America.
Let me tell you something. I think the courage that John showed in that moment, let's just think about things that we deal with in our everyday life that are maybe even challenging for us to talk to our family about. Can you imagine having to talk to the world about something like that? And for John to show that courage to me was just such an incredible example for every man and woman, for every teenager, for every person that may be struggling. And he said, I need some help and I'm going to seek that treatment, and treatment works. And that example to me and his willingness to do that, I just could not be more proud. And for him to trust me enough to allow me to be in that space with him, Adam, I always want to be worthy of that trust. And I would say to the people listening here, yes, there are a number of things that Democrats and Republicans disagree upon. And yes, you have heard a lot about those in this election cycle. And I think we all stand firmly and implanted in our values and ideas. But there are opportunities, and there are many of us who see each other as people. And I am proud to call John a friend, and my husband Wesley and Giselle, all good friends. He calls Wesley the big unit, which is great because it's like when you see them together, it's like the land of giants. My husband is 6'8", and so he and John see eye to eye.
Well, not quite. Isn't John shorter than? Yes,
you know what?
Shorter.
That's what I've heard. I've heard it's just a tiny bit, just a tiny bit, but. For John and I to come together and to think about how can we help others, and in particular, what can we be doing to help this next generation that, statistically showing is really struggling and how to deal with this. The easy thing is to do nothing. And John and I believe that's not an option. And so you've got a lot of different players in this space, a lot of people who want the status quo to continue, that seem to care more about the dollars that they're making versus the lives they could make a difference in. And I think if we continue to speak loudly, ultimately change is inevitable. And I am proud to be alongside John Fetterman trying to make that change happen.
At 5'4" and Fetterman at 6'6".
That's right.
So you look for things to cheer for. So I've got to show you this moment, remind you of this moment, because you were in the moment, that all of America, whether or not you support Donald Trump or not, had to make you feel good. So we go back to September of this year and a certain football game between the University of Alabama and the Georgia Bulldogs. So there you are, in a big game, by the way. This wasn't just another game.
And that was a great game for the Crimson Tide, by the way.
Yeah, of course. The one-by touchdown was at 41-34. I watched that game.
Look at you.
So there you are with President Trump, with Senator Tuberville, Kid Rock, Hank Williams Jr., Senator Daines. We talked about Senator Daines. You have all these people around. And your husband, I remember seeing him in the picture. I think he was in the back row, but he's the only one you see because he's
correct.
As much as you've been in government, as much as you've been around the process, isn't that one where it kind of reminds you, this is what America should be and how we should move forward?
Absolutely. Just that moment, even rewatching it now, it gave me chills because the unity that was felt in that moment, the pride of country, and really the hope of people in that stadium and across the country that we saw on November 5th, clearly be displayed at the ballot box, that President Trump could get this nation back on track, that he could secure the border, that he can make the dollar go further, that he can actually return to peace through strength, that he can make us energy dominant again, that he can do the things that return that respect and return that opportunity, and that everyday Americans, hardworking individuals, will have an opportunity at the American dream. That is what you felt in that moment. People are proud to be an American and proud to just feel that patriotism. It just felt good. You felt the hope, you felt the pride, and just a group of people who once again believe in what is possible.
What is bigger in your household, in the Britt household? Is it college football Saturdays, or is it NFL Sundays? Since
Yeah,
Wesley played, I mean, he
Yes.
was a standout, all-star player at the University of Alabama, played a number of seasons with the New England Patriots, offensive lineman. That's a very tough role. I remember seeing some video of him as I prepared for our discussion.
Yes.
It's like daunting, right?
It really is.
So where is it? Is it Saturdays or Sundays, or is it a split verdict?
It's a little bit of a split verdict. We are real into watching SEC football, obviously, headed to games, trying to be in the stadium if possible on Saturdays. But interestingly, as the tide has continued to rise and there are more and more Alabama players that seem to be sprinkled all across the NFL, it's created kind of a life of its own, that with fantasy football. My son is a diehard Patriot. He lived through his first several years being obviously both a Tide fan and a Patriot.
Right.
He had a bit of a charmed life. I told him, I said, son, this isn't normal. One team doesn't win the national championship or the Super Bowl every other year. That's
right.
not how this works. He is now understanding that. We were really proud, obviously, to continue to watch the Pats. Gerard Mayo was our next door neighbor, 2 doors down when we lived in Foxborough. So to see him have an opportunity to lead the team and being a former teammate of my husband's has been neat. But yeah, that's probably a split verdict, kind of depending on the game, depending on the fantasy team, and depending on what SEC matchup is there that weekend.
Just to finish out this interview, I have to ask you, and I'm expecting humility because that's what you could completely exude. You were the youngest Republican woman ever elected to the United States Senate. Do you feel you're a bit of a trailblazer in the sense that maybe your life and your path will be an inspiration for others to follow?
Look, I could only hope that I would give somebody else an opportunity as a result of my service, as a result of the way I conduct myself, as a result of the things I do and the way I work. Because I am only here because a lot of people did a lot of things. There are women on both sides of the aisle that blazed trails that I am the beneficiary of their hard work. There are men and women that gave me a shot in running for Senate. I mean, if you look back to me running for Senate, and your listeners and viewers may not know this yet, but, I had an opponent that was polling at 65%. I was polling at 2. And if you know anything about politics, you put your name on the ballot and you get to 4. So the fact that I could only get to 2, I say, is really quite remarkable, but not in a way that inspires
Not
confidence.
remarkable.
Exactly. Yeah. But there were people that were willing to take a chance on me because they believed in what was possible. And so it is my hope that when I sit at a hearing, I prepare, I stay up, I read, I'm asking questions and getting ready because I want the way that I conduct myself, I want the way that I lead to not only create opportunities in the moment for the people that I serve, but also the people that come after me. I hope more is possible as a result of me being in a space. So I will tell you this, I will not get it right every day, that's for sure, but it won't be for a lack of trying. I love my state. I believe in my state. I love this nation. Every bit of that is worth fighting for. Every bit of that is worth staying up and studying and asking additional questions and saying, well, what if we did this? Would this help more people? Those are the questions I'm going to continue to ask because those are the people I'm working for. And I would be so honored if, as a result of my service, somebody else has an opportunity to be elevated too.
As they say, you lead by example. And frankly, Senator Katie, you do a lot of that.
Thank you.
We're in very good hands with people like you, and your spirit and your enthusiasm and your hearts. All of those are worn on all sleeves.
Thank you.
And we couldn't feel better about it. I wish you the best.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for
Thank you
joining us.
letting me come on. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.